lesson series, I'm going to be taking a look at the skills and requirements of the second type of 10-mark question and looking at a worked example. Think about firstly what it means to be asked to outline and explain anything in general terms. The outline of a fish, for example, looks something like this. Having provided an outline for what something looks like, in this case a fish, to explain it you might provide some more detail such as its eyes, scales and teeth. In your sociology exam, you will be asked to outline and explain two reasons, ways, criticisms, factors and so on in all three of your exam papers related to the different topics. In the theory and methods section of paper 1, it appears once, twice on paper 2 in section A and then once again in section B, and also on paper 3, this time again as a theory and methods question. The specification for theory and methods is exactly the same for paper 1 as it is for paper 3, and I'll be using that content as the basis for this video and examples. There are two types of 10-mark questions in your sociology exam, again across all three papers. The main difference though is that one requires you to use the item and the second one has no item. We're going to be looking at the second type in this video, outline and explain 2, without an item, but we'll start by noting some of the similarities that might help us to navigate this particular type of question. As previously discussed, the instructions from the front page of your exam paper, questions carrying 10 marks or more should be answered in continuous prose, means that you're required to write with full sentences and paragraphs, therefore no bullet points or lists here for this type of 10-mark question. Given what we know about this question and the fact that it will appear on every paper, there are a few general rules that can be applied across each of this particular type of question on all three papers. Firstly, it's worth 10 marks, therefore as a rough guide, minute and a half per mark for a 10-mark question, 15 minutes. There is no item, which makes it different to the other 10-mark question, as I've said. As with every other question on every other paper though, make sure you're reading the wording of each question very carefully. The command here word, outline and explain 2, is the only bit that remains the same. Obviously the content will be different in terms of what the question is actually asking you to do. Thirdly, since the question will be asking you to outline 2 ways, reasons, criticisms, etc., it makes sense that your answer will be in the form of 2 paragraphs, which leads us to the next point. There is no need for a separate introduction or conclusion to this question. Indeed, the examiner's report states these are not necessary and are unlikely to gain additional marks, and they also take up time. The focus here is going to be therefore on those 2 paragraphs. This is perhaps the most significant difference between this type of 10-mark question and the applying from material from item A analyse question. There is no item for this question. So you have to think of a way, reason, disadvantage, advantage, problem as specified by the question in response to what's been asked and state this point, reason, way, etc. in relation to your existing sociological knowledge. This part is the same as you've done previously. You've stated your point, now you need to develop that stated point in response to the set question with reference to key terms, concepts, examples, findings from sociological studies, and if necessary for the question asked, theories and theorists. Throughout your answer to this type of question, and this is relevant for your essay responses as well, make sure that you show the examiner the relevance of what you are saying. This is sometimes referred to as a chain of reasoning, and it could mean you're using phrases such as this means that, or the relevance of this is. This is what analysis is really all about. When you're using studies, show how or why the findings help you to answer the particular question, rather than just stating your knowledge. The last step is to select a different point or statement from your sociological knowledge and develop your second paragraph, again using concepts, studies and evidence, but be careful to make sure that it is different from your first paragraph, but still answering the question. If you want to break the timing down even further, then your 15 minutes for 2 paragraphs becomes 7.5 minutes each paragraph. And as a final general rule, and I've taken this quote directly from the examiner's report from AQA Centres, that is the college where you'll be taught your A-Level in sociology, are reminded that there are no marks for evaluation in this question. At Queen Mary's College, we separate the teaching of material related to theory and methods into Year 1 and Year 2 topics. This means that your end of Year 1 exams Your 10-mark question on theory methods could come from any one of those areas highlighted in yellow. But by the end of year 2 and your final exams, it could include any of these, either yellow or pink in this case. These are the year 2 topics, but for reference, note that this is a potential area of the specification that you may be asked about as a 10-mark question in paper 1 and paper 3. And then the specification continued. These are the methods, if you like, that the specification states you must know. As I've said here, it states these methods, it doesn't state the variations, but there is an expectation that you know the varieties of these methods. I've given you the questionnaire example. You could say the same for interviews. They can be broken down into structured, unstructured, semi-structured, group interviews, and so on. So for each of these, make sure you're aware not only of the method, but of the variation of these. And this is where your question is going to come from. So if we look back, these are some examples of the types of questions that have been previously asked, either as question 6 on paper 1 or as question 5 on paper 3. The command word will always be to outline and explain, and they are all worth 10 marks. Again, the questions highlighted in yellow relate to year 1 content and pink for year 2 content. Although, as you do more on theory methods in year 2 content, your examiner will be anticipating some of that material in your final exam response. If we look at the mark scheme, then there are some common factors that we can note for a top mark band answer, that is in the 8 to 10 mark bracket. Firstly, you need to display a very good knowledge and understanding of 2, and this could be as per the question states, reasons, disadvantage, so on. In other words, they need to be accurate, and you need a fair bit of detail here. Your 2 points need developing using the chain of reasoning, hence the general rules that I set out earlier. Note the word analysis is needed here, not evaluation. As a year 1 sociology student preparing for your end of year 1 exam, then we can narrow down the topic that you're going to be asked about. It could be asked you to outline and explain 2 practical factors affecting choice of method or topic, or outline and explain 2 ethical factors affecting choice of topic or method, or a question related to a particular theoretical issue. Given that we've not looked at positive interpreters in as much detail in year 1 as we will do in year 2, for your end of year 1 exam, that appears to be less likely. Based on the specification and our knowledge of the question commands, we can also propose a hypothetical question that asks you to outline and explain 2 advantages of using one of the research methods listed on the specification or their variations, or to outline and explain 2 disadvantages or limitations of using one of the research methods, again, or their variations listed from the specification. Note the examiner may ask you about one of these methods as listed here, or as a specific variation, such as personal documents, as a variation of documents. For example, in this case, outline and explain 2 disadvantages of using unstructured interviews in sociological research for 10 marks. We can apply the general rules to the question. Just give yourself a quick reminder of what those are. Press pause if you need to. Or a slimmed down version. Remember, this is written in continuous prose. The boxes are just there as a guide. You state your first disadvantage, as a sentence usually, spend the rest of the paragraph developing that with reference to concepts, examples, and as I've said, a chain of reasoning. Then do the same with a second different disadvantage. To see what this looks like and the process, I've done a timed write-up as an answer to this particular question on unstructured interviews. It's available on my YouTube channel, and I'll attach this link to this video as well. In my next video, I'll run through another example of a response to a 10-mark outline and explain question related to research methods again.